Here we are with the next installation in this series of putting together this Dixpadero Winters rear end unit. So I got the welding done for the brackets for the 4-bar links. I ground some of the welds down just because they were weren't pretty. I wanted to make them nice as I could. Not that I'm not happy with them, you know, they look pretty good. So I still need to pull all of the rust and stuff off of there using a wire wheel or something like that. But we can get started without it. So things that got to get done, you know, still got to get some axles and the seals and bearings that go in there. And then to get ready for putting this thing together, it says on the left axle assembly, which will be the one back here, I have to grind some of the webbing away. Let me show you what that is. So we're looking at the inner side of the flange for the axle tubes, and specifically it's got to be done on that tube over there. I'm just using this as a demo. So it says the inside the outside 1.5 inches out here, that you need to grind that down and clearance it. So to do that, I'm gonna have to install the races on both sides, and then I'm gonna have to install the bearings on the carrier unit. And then once you get that done and you do some of this grinding, you have to set the carrier unit in there and spin it around and make sure it's got good clearance. So I suppose I will start by flipping that one over and marking it. And then from there, I need to install the bearings on the carrier. You heat them up to 250 degrees and drop them on there. Make sure you can tap them down, make sure they're fully seated on the carrier. And then same thing with the races, just install the axle races as normal, clean all that stuff in there out, take the races, and with a race installer that you can get at, I'm sure, AutoZone or somewhere, you just tap those in. So that's what I'm gonna do next. Frozen carrier. Okay, so how did I get these on? Probably in a less graceful manner than most of you. Probably everybody's got a press. I chunked my old one when the old DMG went away and I built the new shop. So I still hadn't gotten a new one, but by golly, I was gonna get this done. So I used a, let's see here, 1 5/8 Job Smart socket there from Tractor Supply. That was about 19 bucks, and those implements of destruction right there. And no, I didn't just hammer the snot out of them. All right, so I put the carrier in the freezer, which is why it looks like this. It's still freezing cold. So put that in the freezer for about 4 or 5 hours. And then the manual for the rear end recommends that you put the bearings in the oven for 250. So I set the oven on 250. Don't tell my wife. We're out, not where she usually uses the kitchen, but she might someday. So I set it for 250. I left the bearings in there for about 40 minutes. Got them nice and toasty. And then when I went outside, you know, took the carrier out on the carport there and dropped the bearings on. And they go on pretty easy. If you're going to hammer on bearings, you know, it's okay to put some pressure here on the inner race. What you don't want is on the cage and on the bearings themselves. You don't want any pressure. So this thing, it fits right on the inner race, and it's also big enough on the inside so that the carrier would fit through it. I mean, it doesn't stick through much, so you don't really have to worry about that. But yeah, so that went in pretty good. So now I'm ready to take the carrier out and be able to set that in one of the axle tubes. So I think the reason that you grind down that section that they have in the instructions, and I'll go over that again, is probably because the the bolts there will probably rub on it if you don't. So we'll go take a look at that. So I drove the bearing race in to the tube there. I just used a block of wood. You can get race drivers, rent those from over at AutoZone or one of those places. And then I have the reinforcement ribs marked from about 1.5 inches from the end, and I'll show you why that ends up being where the interference happens. So here is my center section down here. I'm sorry, the carrier. I refer to them interchangeably for some reason. We don't know why. All right, so that goes in there like that. Now listen. All right, so you can hear it pinging on those ribs. So that's why you have to grind a little bit off of those ribs. The instructions recommend using a hand grinder for it, and I've got something that will suffice. So I will do that. I still hadn't cleaned all the rust off of these, but we're making progress here. So that is good. Okay. That is, yeah, got that stuff removed. The webs there. All right, so that's good. And then we put the carrier in. Hard to do this one-handed. I might need to invest in some. Oop, let me make sure that's cleaned out well. At least get the grit off of it. All right, back to our regularly scheduled service here. Okay, so now the carrier's back in. No noises. No tink, 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 tink as it goes around. So we will call that adequately clearanced. And if I can take this off here without hurting myself, you can see where those outer bolt heads would be the ones that would be causing the interference. Okay, so we got that done. Further down the road with the plan here, you can see the one on the left I have cleaned up significantly. Got all the surface rust off of it. This one is kind of as it was. Lots of surface rust still on that one. So the plan will be to clean them both up. And then I am going to buy some of the rattle can stuff, epoxy primer that's got the hardener and stuff that's kind of on the bottom of the bottle. You got to smack the bottom of it and mix it all up. But I wanted something a little bit nicer than just regular rattle can. So I'm going to do that. Probably body work them just a little bit, fill in some pits and that kind of stuff, anything major, and grind some stuff down just to make it look pretty, and then paint them up. All right, got these bad boys primed. You can see after I primed it how much, you got metal eating off of there from sitting for ages. This one too. So I'll probably put a little filler in those. Yep, do that just to make them look a little bit nicer. So use this product. Got it off of the old Amazon. Kind of nice because it's a 2K primer, which means it's got a activator in it or a hardener. It's epoxy. This is the beige. I guess you can get any color you want just about. I think I saw it in black, beige, and maybe white, gray, something like that. But I wanted to try this. I didn't want to use just regular old rattle can that's not going to last very long. So this stuff, you shake it real good. You put that little cap. It comes on the normal top cap. You take it off, put it on the bottom, smack it on the ground, and make sure that it got fully depressed so it squirts all the catalyst into the paint, and then you go on about your business painting. Puts out a pretty good fog, so wear your equipment, and then you probably want some ventilation. I had the door open in here while I was doing it and got all those nasty fumes out, and then you can go from there. Pot life, only about 36 hours, so once you do the can, it's gonna be done quick. Here's the next part of the process, and just basically showing you that I threw some paint on there. It's a metallic gray. It is a polyurethane 2-part paint. It's got a weird cap on it. Not that one, but the one that comes with it. You smash it on top, and it's like that other stuff I showed you. It's 2-part polyurethane, so this is really thick. Goes on thick. You got to be careful spraying it. I got some runs, but with what we're looking at here, not an issue as far as I'm concerned. It's from a company called Samurai. It's marine coating. It's really tough, so I'll put a link to that stuff if you want it. Pot life's about 4 hours on it, so it gives you a little bit of work time. So yeah, there we go. All right, we're starting to make a little bit of progress here. So what I have, the instructions say to use a 010 gasket and put it on the left side, or the driver's side of the unit, and then bolt that to the center section after putting the drive gears and everything in that side of the tube, and then you start seeing how it turns, taking measurements, etc. The other thing you have to do is you have to take the quick change cover off the back, which I did, and put the gears in. So what gaskets I'm talking about, excuse the mess, are these guys here. All right, so these are the gaskets that go on the inside of the tube. And they're all different thicknesses. And by feeling them, I would say the thickest gasket is the blue, next to green, then the white, and then there's these really thin white ones. All right, so they don't tell you what a 010 gasket is. Like, they don't give you color codes. So I went and did some research. I'll post the chart that I found for that here in this video, so you'll have a better idea. But what I did is put the 010 gasket on there, or 009 as it says in the material that I found. And then I used regular bolts, regular nuts, 3/8-16, not the locking ones that they send. They send the nylock type nuts with it for the final assembly. So put those on there, and then I stood the whole assembly up on end and started turning the gears. All right, so here we're looking at the assembly from above, and when I just had the one gasket on the other side, and then started trying to spin the ring and pinion around, with that gasket only, you couldn't even get it to hardly turn. What you're doing is you're setting the bearing preload. So each side, the bearing, has to have a little bit of tension on it. And with just the one gasket on there, that just, it wouldn't even turn. I mean, like, it would get stuck. So now what I have is I have one of the thicker gaskets and then one of the next size down. So it's probably somewhere in the region of 0.17 or something like that altogether. And at least the thing will spin without binding. I should have taken a video of it earlier, because you would get like part way around and then it would just almost freeze. You had to like force it, which is, I don't think, where you need to be. So there will be a lot of taking gaskets off or on to try to get this thing where the tension is right and the preload is set on the bearings. I'll try to find some good links for that. There was actually a guy on the Jalopy Journal there, the HAMB, the message board, that what he did is he put his complete rear end together. So the top bell would be right here, and then he used a feeler gauge between the bell and the housing here, and got that measurement, and then the one on the other side, and he's onto something of, well, if you know how much room is in there, then you can get pretty close on the gasket setup. What I have to do at this point is go get 10 more of the nuts for this. That was a Tractor Supply earlier. I could have done that. And then start working the gasket on this side. Then after that, we'll put the axles in each side. They will not be cut down, so I'll just put them through the tubes. The bearings won't be in. And then you've got to get help because you got to spin both axles at the same time and check some tension on some things. So I'll explain more about that as I go, hopefully do it right. So while you weren't looking, I went out and scrubbed out the inside of the tubes so I can really do final assembly stuff. The other thing I did was on this side, I changed to a, let's see, it's a blue and a white, which is a little thinner than a blue and a green, whatever those distances are. And stood it up on its end over there and made sure that it's still spun free and didn't drag. So it's a little tighter, but it still doesn't drag. So I'm gonna say, based on what I can read, instruction-wise and everything, that's good. I film this and then I'm going to bed. It's getting late. So what I got is the driver's side tube on, and I've been working with the gasket sizes between the tube and the housing to get, I think it's called the lash. So the ring gear here needs to not move this way. So, it needs to be sandwiched between the two tubes so it doesn't have lateral motion, as little as possible. And then you have to set, I think it's called the lash. Anyway, most rear ends, you see people checking stuff down here. You can't do that with a quick change because, as you can see, nothing in there is moving. So this is moving slightly. So all the motion or all the movement is happening back in the quick change gears here. So you've really got to get in here and to check the lash, you would want this to move slightly. And I mean, we're talking, I think they say 0.004 to 0.008. So we're not talking much. It can't be where it doesn't move at all. But when you twist on the ring gear here, you need to be looking back at the pinion, and the pinion doesn't move. If the ring gear moves, it makes just a little faint clicking sound. It's really hard to describe. Then you're there. And that's probably the best you can do on one of these. So you set the lash between the ring and pinion based on the thickness of the gaskets on the driver's side, right? So that's where that happens. So it moves the ring gear closer to the pinion, up this way. If you put more gaskets, it's going to push the pinion away, or the ring away from the pinion. And when it does that, you'll have more lash. So hopefully describe that good enough for you to go and do it yourself. If I could show you, I mean, do you hear it? So you can't even hardly see it, but the whole carrier is sitting on its race on the other side. So that's not what's moving. The pinion down there is not moving. So the ring and pinion, just a little bit of lash between the gears. And if you wanted to, you could put your yellow paint in there and do all that stuff. But I'm pretty satisfied. I'm satisfied with where it is, so that's what we're going with. All right, now we see the passenger side bolted on. These things have been on and off. I don't know how many times, 20, 10 a piece, something like that. But after I set the lash on the other side, you you got to make sure that the whole assembly in there, the whole differential, is not going to move this way. So set your lash, and then you're setting bearing preload when you put this side on. So what should happen is you should be able to spin this without, I mean, there should be a little drag, but nothing significant, right? You can hear it in there. And then you need to make sure you go all the way around. Make sure you get all the way around that ring gear so you don't have a spot where it's dragging, because if you do, it's not going to be good once you get it put together. All right, so I'm happy with the way that is. If I'm happy, well, by golly, you should be happy. So what I'm going to do next, blow it apart. Got to grease the bearings that are in there, and then got to put some gasket sealant around the ends of the bells, which is going to, bring the spacing out slightly more. It will be fine. Then I'm going to cut those axles off to the correct size. What else? Put me some studs in there, and then I got to find me your brake kit, and then that'll be that. All right, look inside here while I'm sealing things up. So I've seen a couple of guys take silicone and put it all over the edges of everything. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The sealing surface is where you see I had this Aviation Forma Gasket 2 down here. All right, so that's where the case seals up with the bells. This mating surface, you just spend all that time figuring out which gaskets to put in, and if you smear a bunch of silicone on there, you've just wiped out that work. So I'm not doing it that way. The other thing I did take some blue silicone, and you see this stud and this stud, they actually go all the way into the case. So on the back side of the mounting boss there, it's an open hole. I don't think you'd want that open, so I did put silicone in those holes to plug them up, hopefully to prevent leaks. So that's what I'm doing. All right, got this doodah down here waiting for axles. So a couple of things that are happening. In that kit right there are the pieces and parts for the disc brake kit, including the rotors and the caliper brackets, and also the end brackets for the end of this deal here. So when I measured from the carrier inside, so all the way deep in there, you got to make sure you get in the part with the splines, right, in the carrier, or if you cut your axle too short, it's not going to turn. To out here, it's about 25 inches. So if we look at the axle, if you measure 25 inches from the end of here, you're probably going to be off, okay? Because this thing with the seal on the end is wider than your mounting flange that it sits in, okay? So that is like 0.66, 0.65, and this is all the way across, it's 0.9 something. So you're not going to be able to sink this whole thing in there. So some is going to stick out, probably to about the black part, and the gold part will probably stick out on the outside. I hadn't put a mic on it to see if that's true, but it's pretty close. So you got about 0.3 that's going to stick out down here, and that's normal. And then you just need to measure correctly, and then there's a bunch of different ways to cut the axles. And then there's a way that you can cut the axle by using a hose clamp on there real tight where you want to cut, and then cutting around where the hose clamp is. Don't get into the hose clamp. And then you should be at the correct distance on here. All right, so I measured a little bit less than I needed, of course, because you don't want that thing to hit on the bottom of the carrier when it bottoms out. But just a little bit less, and then make your cut. All right, so there's the cut. Yeah, it's not perfect on the end there. Still hot, so what do? You grab your flap wheel, and you get that down nice and flat. Don't grind off more than you need to. and then maybe a little chamfer on the edge right there, just to break that edge down. And then it's time to try it out, see if it works. Okay, took the race off the bearing. There's the race installed. Now we put the axle. Second verse, same as the first, other side. Drive the race in. Make sure the race is seated all the way against the back edge. You can see there's a tiny bit left. I still have to drive that race in, okay? So don't skimp on that, it'll cause you problems. Okay, secret to happiness here is T-nuts. So T-nuts are what you need. I guess it'd be a T-bolt and just a regular nut. So T-bolts. T-bolts is what you need to go in the back through your new Torino ends there to be able to fasten the stop for the axle onto the quick change. So these are from Quick Performance. I'll put a link to those. I don't know those dudes, but you know, they had a good price on things and this is what I got. So maybe a part number to go with it. Wham, save you a little bit of time there. I'll put those on. All right, you can see from this side that that is a multi-pattern. So you have to figure out where your wheel studs are gonna go. I'll put the number of the wheel studs that I used. It was a Dorman product. They make good stuff. It's pretty cheap. And then the next thing we gotta do after we get the wheel studs pulled through, you know how to do that, don't you? You probably watched a few videos on that. So I got the wheel studs pulled through the hub, got the rotor sitting on there, and then you got to figure out where your caliper is going to go, because these spacers in here determine where your caliper is going to be. So it's just a mock-up, don't get too excited, but if you look in there, what you can see is the caliper. I think, you know, the middle of the caliper should be centered. I'm sorry, yeah, the middle of the caliper should be centered with the center of the rotor. And it looks to me like there's a little bit more room on the right side. Might be hard to see with the stuff in the way. But what that means is that I need to pull one of the shims out of here. So I think by pulling this very small shim out, the one on the inside, that the caliper is going to be in the right place. Yes, I know the bleeder's not on the right side. I said I'm mocking it up. Give me a break, okay? So the bleeder's on the bottom side, and these are not the calipers I'm going to use. They are geometric calipers, but they don't have the e-brake stuff in them. So I'm going to get the ones with the e-brake because I want to be able to have an emergency brake when I stop. So let me get that figured out. I'm going to put that side on over there, get it done, and then we ought to be able to wheel it behind the car and put some wheels on it. As a result of all that work, here is the money shot, at least as far as I'm concerned. Long time getting to this point. It's almost a roller. Take a look at the rear end sitting in its position back there. So you can see where the shock is. You know, I think the shocks are in a good position as far as the vertical, because you know, I'm not going to have too much tilt on the shock, so I'll get good spring rate out of it. I like all that stuff. Looks good. Plenty of finish welding left to do. I might have to take the cross member out, so I'm going to order the bolts for the bottom, because the bottom of the shock down here, you have to have a spacer for that. And I think that the shocks are going to be displaced a little far to the back of the car. So what I'll have to do is I'm just going to, you know, I hate to do it, but it is what it is. I'm going to plan on cutting the shock cross member out, and I will move it forward to match. I don't want to put any more spacers up here if I don't have to. I mean, they send a bunch of different spacers with the kit. You know, and I guess you could space them forward some, but it doesn't look like you'd have any room left to bolt everything up. And I think the shock should sit on the shank of the bolt, like this part, not on the threads of the bolt. So yeah, I'll cut that out and do it. But overall, you know, I think we're looking pretty good here. I don't know, I would say the next couple of weeks. I got a lot going on, just as many as you do, but I'll be able to get the bolt and the spacer kit, go ahead and cut the mount out, move it forward maybe an inch or so, and then tack it, burn it in, and then I am going to have a roller. So that's great. I hope you learned something from all of this. You know, I don't know what I spent. I don't keep track of it. I don't care. It was about the education. You pay for an education one way or another. You know, it's either going to be time, money, or maybe both. Right. Leave a comment, all that good stuff. And if you need anything, come see us in Tennessee. Long road, a lot of work, but here's the payoff. All right, she's a roller. She's a roller with a quick change in it. That's pretty cool. All right, I like the stance. A couple of things I noticed. Looks like the rear end might be a little out of spec forward to aft, and I did some tweaking on it. You can see that the bar on that side is a lot shorter than the bar on this side. That's because I was messing with it. That tells me that I need to go back before I do any final welding and check the mounts for it to make sure they're gonna be in the right place. I might have been a little off on that. Hard to believe I was that far off, but you know, anything's possible. So I'll have to go back and look at that. I measured the top ones. The top ones look good, so I'm pretty sure it's the bottom mounts because they really make the most difference there. The top ones have a lot to do with, well, I mean, heck, they're all adjustable, so they all have something to do with pinion angle and all that stuff. But I like the stance, just overall. You know, I can go back and fiddle with that now, or I can start messing with the body. I'd actually rather get the body on it and see how that's gonna fit, see what needs to be modified from there, and then come back and do some of this other stuff. Still have plenty to go, but yeah, that's what progress looks like. Good.